Merrill Unger, Archaeology in the Old Testament. So, worthwhile reading for all Christians and non-Christians about the nature of paganism with which the Israelites were surrounded in the years from around 1400 to 600 BC. One of the chapters in this book is called The Religion of the Canaanites. I'd like to read you some passages from it which elucidate for us the stark contrast between the religion of Israel and the religion of the people they dispossessed in the so-called Promised Land. The Canaanite pantheon, Unger talks about. Canaanite deities, on the one hand, present remarkable fluidity of personality and function, so that it's often extremely difficult to fix the particular domain of different gods or to define their kinship one to another. Physical relationship, even sex change, with disconcerting ease. This is one of the grossly irrational aspects of Canaanite religion. Notice that phrase, grossly irrational in its aspects, indicative of its corrupt nature. For instance, the god El is the supreme god, even though Baal is the one with which we encounter most often in the Old Testament, and he was in fact the most popular of the Canaanite gods. His father was called El, the word etymologically related, of course, to the word Elohim, word God in Hebrew. El, the supreme god of the Canaanite pantheon, was the head of the pantheon. As the god, El was, in accordance with the general irrationality and moral grossness of Canaanite religion, a dim and shadowy figure, who Philo says had 3 wives, who were also his sisters, and who could readily step down from his eminence and become the hero of sordid escapades and crimes. Philo portrays El as a bloody tyrant whose acts terrified all the other gods, and who dethroned his own father, like you might remember Uranus in the Greek myth. Murdered his favorite son as well, and decapitated his own daughter. The Ugaritic, that is Canaanite poems, add the crime of uncontrolled lust to his morbid character, and the description of his seduction of 2 unnamed women is the most sensuous in ancient Near Eastern literature. Despite these enormities, El was considered the exalted, quote, father of years, the father of man, the father bull, that is, the progenitor of the gods, tacitly likened to a bull in the midst of a herd of cows. Like Homer's Zeus, he was the father of men and gods. Then there's Anat, his wife, his principal wife, a combination of the sister and spouse of Baal, that is, Baal's wife, I should have said, one of a galaxy of 3 Canaanite goddesses whose character gives a hint of the depths of moral depravity to which the Canaanite cult sank. The other 2 are Astarte and Asherah. All 3 were patronesses of sex and war. Sex mainly in its sensuous aspect as lust, and war in its evil aspect as violence and murder. Singularly enough, from our point of view, Anat was given the epithet of virgin and the Holy One in her invariable role of sacred prostitute. Another illustration of the utter irrationality and moral indiscrimination of Canaanite religion. Such a contrary combination of virginity and fertility not only appears in Canaanite goddesses, but emasculation and fecundity appear as contradictory features of Canaanite gods, and sacred prostitution of both sexes was a concomitant of the cult of the Syrian and Phoenician goddesses. The goddess was called Kutshu, the holiness, that is, the Holy One, in the perverted moral sense, and representations of her as a nude woman bestride a lion with a lily in one hand and a serpent in the other point her out as a divine courtesan, that is, prostitute. You might recall, as you picture a woman bestride a lion, the image of the woman who rides the wild beast in the book of Revelation. In the same sense, the male prostitutes of this cult, consecrated to the cult of Kutshu and prostituting themselves to her honor, were called Kaddish, usually translated sodomites, but from the root holy. As a patroness of war, Anat appears in a fragment of the Baal epic in an incredible orgy of blood and destruction. For some unknown reason, she fiendishly butchers mankind, young and old, in a most horrible and wholesale fashion, wading delightedly in human gore up to her knees, yea, up to her throat, all the while exulting sadistically. Unger concludes his thought in this chapter by this judgment. It was inescapable that people should gravitate to the moral level of the sordid gods they worship. So this was the moral character of the gods of Canaan, and no doubt became the moral character of the people of Canaan as well. If we are to judge by the results of mythology and archaeology, this was the religion that greeted the Israelites as they entered the Promised Land. Merrill Unger, Archaeology in the Old Testament.
All right.